Okay, so hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Full Global. This is where we connect with global first entrepreneurs and remote work experts from all around the world to share their experiences. In this episode, we're diving into an extraordinary journey with Eran Mizrahi, the force behind Ingredient Brothers. So from crunching numbers at Deloitte to mastering the culinary arts, and now he's running a cool company in the food world, working with suppliers across 12 countries, I guess, and having employees on different continents. So his journey is all about following his passion, coming up with ideas, and leading the way. So it is a pleasure to have you with us, Eran.
Thanks so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Before we start, would you like to add something to that introduction?
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I've had a very non-linear journey coming from South Africa and was in finance, and then had always had a passion for food and landed up in the food industry. And through that, saw an opportunity to start Ingredient Brothers with a very simple premise of trying to improve the way companies source their ingredients from all over the world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And to set the stage for our listeners, could you maybe start with a brief intro of your company, right? Could you maybe share some numbers with us? How has your company expanded in terms of like a team size, maybe locations, clients, suppliers, or any other metrics you're comfortable with?
Yeah, of course. So Alap, my co-founder, and I, we used to work together, and we started the business in 2021, middle of the year 2021. So we haven't been around for very long. We thought we would, start a lifestyle business with two of us in a room for 10 years, trying to, sell a couple of containers of product, but very quickly stumbled upon global workforce, and also saw that the demand for what we were offering was a lot bigger than what we expected. And so, started to hire people in 2021, started importing from a few different countries, the first being the Philippines, which obviously has a really great global workforce. And so that really spurred us on. And so, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth. To give you some perspective, like you said, we're importing from 12 different countries. Our ingredients are found in, thousands of grocery stores and food stores around the country. We work with national brands. And then from a people's perspective, I think we were about 9 people this time last year, and now we're at 40 people. Our team is predominantly in Argentina, South Africa, and the Philippines, with a few people also in Colombia. So we're, very spread out across lots of different time zones and different cultures. But it's been an incredible experience to build a truly remote global team for a global supply chain, right? It only makes sense to solve global supply chain problems with a global team.
Yeah, and going back, moving from finance to the forefront of the food industry, you have charted a path that many find, I guess, inspiring, right? So what was the defining moment that sparked the idea for Ingredient Brothers?
Yeah, I think, the first time I really had this idea, so I come from a finance world. I'm always looking for arbitrage where there's, information is inefficient, and you can, you see an inefficient market, and there's some arbitrage and ability to add service and sell a product that people need, and give people more transparency within a certain market. And that really came in my first job out of business school, where I was at Plated.com, which was a meal kit company, and started to do sourcing projects and really started to tackle supply chain, and started to see big discrepancy in pricing, where like if you had the resources, you had the time, and you had some volume, you can unlock a tremendous amount of value. And that for me felt like an opportunity. I was like, wow, like there's so much spread here that people are, not getting ripped off, but there is a lot of margin being made in an industry where, you would hope there'd be more efficient information, where, I always give the example, if you tell someone to go and buy 1 kilo of almonds today, they can go into Amazon, onto many different websites, find delivery speed, taste profiles, certifications, all the information they need, and they can get it within a day. And then I go tell you to buy 40,000 kilos of almonds, and I give you a week or 2 weeks, you probably will still not come with the right answer. And I think that, that spurred it, where I thought, oh, wow, maybe we could use technology, maybe we could use people to do something a little different in the industry and maybe add some value.
And that's awesome. And here's something I believe our audience, especially those dreaming of starting their own venture, will find incredibly insightful. How did you secure your very first client? Like starting without a recognized name or brand is always a challenge, right? So how did you navigate this path?
Yeah, I think not on purpose. I started the business a bit later in life. I came to the US. And it took me a while to earn my stripes and to really, build a foundation and build the capital you need to start a business. And so by the time I started, I'd built a really good network. And actually, a lot of my network had come from trying to recruit a lot of people in the food space. I really have a passion for recruiting. So I had a lot of coffee chats and developed a lot of relationships. And so there were certain people that I'd tried to recruit a number of times and had developed a relationship with, where I now reach out to them again and said, hey, I'm not trying to hire you, but I would love if you bought some ingredients or at least listen to my pitch. And I think that really helped, which was, not only was I in the industry for a number of years, but I'd built a really good network and I'd been very cognizant of trying to build real relationships in the industry. And so we almost cheated our way to our first customers, where we had no brand behind Ingredient Brothers, but we had experience in the industry, and it was almost a continuation of our jobs, and then being able to utilize our existing network to get those first few deals gave us the confidence we needed to scale the business.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about networking in a few seconds, but let's talk about like your clients, like in partners, right? So establishing partnerships with suppliers across like 12 countries is still like a challenge, I guess, even nowadays, right? How do you like initiate and build this initial relationships, right? Is personally visiting each supplier part of your part of your strategy, to ensure quality, or you had some other tactics?
Yeah, I think there's all of those things are true. I think establishing good supplier relationships takes a lot of time and effort. A supplier, just like any other stakeholder, I think all they really want is, transparency, for you to act with integrity and to build a true and lasting relationship. And I think, the thing that we have to our advantage is that the US is one of the biggest markets in the world. And so most food manufacturers or suppliers are, really excited to try and sell their products into the US and find a vehicle such as Ingredient Brothers to help promote their products. So there is, we have a leg up in that sense. But then I think there is a tremendous amount of work to develop that relationship and ensure that you continue it. And I think just like anyone else, there is a trust and integrity that you have to build and gain. It's very easy to lose people's trust. It's hard to gain their trust, right? And so I think it takes time to build that. You need to show performance. And I think, also having a global team where we have people on the other side of the world who are awake when I'm asleep, and they're able to continue building that relationship during the day in normal working hours and facilitate that relationship building. I think that's also been incredibly helpful, where otherwise, we'd be staying up really late at night or requiring our suppliers to stay up late at night to, deal with the relationship and some of the issues that we have or whatever it is. I think having a team, in the Philippines, it just gives us that leg up where like our team is speaking to our suppliers continuously throughout the day and building that relationship, building that trust.
And yeah, so I'm sure our listeners would appreciate a story maybe from your experiences. Maybe can you be more specific? Could you maybe share a memorable moment maybe from your travels or negotiations with suppliers from like different countries, right? That highlights maybe the complexities or maybe joys of building this global network of suppliers.
Yeah, I think, there isn't necessarily one specific story that, sticks with me about building the joy. But I think, the amazing thing about doing what we do, both on hiring this global team as well as working with global suppliers, is that you do get to interact with people from all over the world and have interactions that you probably wouldn't have on if you just had a company only located in the US. And I think, one thing that sticks out to me thinking about it now is like we import a lot of spices from India, and our supplier was in town and we had dinner with them. And he had a love for wildlife and animals, and I come from South Africa and have the same passion. And it was, we connected over that, and it was, we had this incredible dinner and I closed the restaurant down, really talking about things that we have in common and building that bond. And I think, those moments are, very special, and we cherish them. And I think, not many people get the opportunity to do that and bridge those gaps. That was a special moment for us. And I'll remember that dinner for a long time.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, was diverse food regulations across different countries ensuring compliance is a must-have for that business, I guess. So how does Ingredient Brothers navigate and ensure compliance with both, I guess, local and maybe international standards when you have so many suppliers from so many countries?
Yeah, I mean, I think the world thankfully is getting smaller and smaller every day. I think doing this 20 years ago was very different to today. I think there's been a tremendous amount of improvement in standardization of standards as well as requirements. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier. It just there is a lot more literature and guidance around doing this work. And I think, we've had to invest heavily in building a compliance team that does a tremendous amount of due diligence in vetting a supplier, right? You can't just do business with anyone. I mean, it's food. There is a tremendous amount of risk. And so we do have a, compliance team that have rigorous standards in terms of being able to, one, validate a product, right? Every product is different and every product comes with so many different types of risks. Just because you import pumpkin seeds doesn't mean when you import cassava flour that the same structure exists, right? They have completely different risks that you have to look out for. And so really understanding the product risk is like number one for us. And then going in and validating that vendor and going through, due diligence, understanding what certifications they have, going through their audits, sending third parties to audit their facilities again, validating the information that we're getting from them. And then on every order that we do, there's also many, many steps that go into fulfilling one order, right? Everything from, inspecting the loading of the container to doing sample testing of all the products, and just making sure that what we're getting, meets the specification that we have and doesn't have any risk to the end consumer.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not like a very easy business.
I would say, yeah, there's 1,000 small steps that have to happen in order to get a container or product, let's say, from one part of the world to the other part of the world, and do it as cheap as people do, right? I mean, you can walk into a grocery store and find products from all over the world at reasonable pricing, right? And sometimes you don't even think about you never think about the trade-offs between one versus the other as being, oh, this is from somewhere else, so it's more expensive. Usually they, have the same or if not cheaper pricing.
Got it. And you touched this. I would like to talk about your team that is based again, in different countries. You mentioned Argentina, right? In
Argentina, Colombia, Philippines, and South Africa. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So, but hiring the right team is crucial for any business, for any special global business and special business with so many specifics like yours, right? So, how did Ingredient Brothers decided to start hiring globally, and what was your approach hiring your very first employee outside of the US?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of luck and obviously timing. I think, with COVID, the acceleration of remote work opened everyone's eyes. I was definitely the manager that forced everyone in the office prior to the pandemic. And so, had a very anti work from home mentality. And post pandemic, we started the business and we were starting to import from the Philippines, which, again, it was just fortuitous that was happening. And I started to read a little bit more and saw that a lot of people in the Philippines were working for US based companies and thought, what's the risk of meeting some people? And thankfully, we started honestly with recruiting on random websites that I found profiles on, and not knowing too much on how to validate and vet candidates and what profile and how, exactly what the process should look like. But we got lucky with our first few hires, and we managed to find some really great people that, validated this notion that maybe this could be a thing. I think we still weren't sure. And I think after hiring our first few people that really added tremendous amount of value and accelerated the growth of the company, it was then that we're like, okay, wow, like this is a core competency of our business. I think that's what differentiates us a little bit more, is that, this is part of our ethos, our DNA is building a global team with global culture. And I think we make a conscious effort to, continuously work on that. And it's not just a plug-in, this is not just we're going to supplement part of our team with a global workforce. And I think that's helped us evolve our recruiting strategy and build a really strong culture at Ingredient Brothers.
And what were the key factors you considered to ensure those guys were the right fit for your remote international team?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the biggest thing is, we have company values, right? And I think the company values talk to what, to some extent, makes a great remote worker, right? I think, it's not for everyone, right? Some people do need an office and need that structure. I think that's okay. And I think understanding that is important. I think, people, some of our values are own your own future, right? So people who really take initiative, if they don't have work, they're going to reach out and try and get something done. They really care about, career progression and professional development. We have a value of like sweating the small stuff, people who really care and are interested in like the finer details. And I think, those are some of the skills and like, that curiosity that you try and look for in a candidate that, will allow them to be successful in an environment where you have to be a little bit more proactive. It's not as easy as it is in a physical space to maybe get feedback or, get questions answered. And so you need to look for that with your candidates. But again, like it can be different. I'm sure that there are people who have completely opposite values to us and have managed to build a great remote culture with different types of people. But I think for us, that's what we found works really well.
And you mentioned that at this point you're hiring in 4 different countries, right?
Yep.
So were there any reasons why did you decide to hire specifically from those countries, like Argentina, Colombia, Philippines, South Africa?
Yeah, I think I'm from South Africa, so biased to try and hire people from where I was brought up. I think the Philippines initially was a little bit lucky, but then also realized that they have incredible food science education, and so there's just an incredible wealth of QA and compliance talent over there, as well as English is first language, first or second language, and so when you're dealing with customers and customer questions, that can be advantageous. And then Argentina, I think looked for countries that do a lot of agriculture and exporting and have a big food presence, and then English as well as a proficiency, because over there we hire people who do sales and account management, and so that's been really important and very similar in Colombia. So we've tried to keep concentration in countries, so that we don't hire from 50 different countries. I think it is nice to have a critical mass within a country so that people can get together. We see our employees going on weekends away together, meeting up at co-working spaces, doing, really fun activities, even without the company trying to initiate that. And I think so having some critical mass within the country has really helped evolve the culture. And so I think we'll continue to, when we decide to expand into different countries, like really make an investment in building out a strong presence there.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So working across different time zones can be quite a challenge. I mean, for I guess for the majority of companies, that's the main issue, that's the main blocker, right, in terms of this global hiring trend. So I know that in your case, it's a different case. So could you maybe share an example when hiring a global team allowed you to respond to a need or solve a problem more quickly than usual, having everyone on site?
Yeah, I think to your point, time zone is a challenge, right? Even for us, it's a big challenge. I think, you really have to focus on communication and building the tools that allow you to have that transfer at the end of the day. I think that because we're remote first and we're a pretty new company, we can build processes and think about those things from day one. And we're definitely not perfect and are constantly trying to improve, but that's a focus of ours we know that unlocking that and making that part of who we are will continue to drive value. And then in to answer your question, I think the advantages are incredible because, we can get questions from customers at 6 p.m. Eastern time and put that in the system. And then when, our team in the Philippines comes online, they're reaching out to suppliers that by 8 a.m. the next day, we've got some answers and we can give feedback, right? And not only that, like if it's a question that the supplier needs clarity on, you're not just sending an email to the supplier, then waking up the next morning, seeing the response, sending the response back to get clarity, and then waiting another 24 hours for the answer. And so that velocity in being able to, solve problems and get answers for our customers has, allowed us to move so much faster and adds a lot of value to everyone.
Yeah, and you mentioned this in. I guess I saw this in I heard this in one of your podcasts, a previous podcast. You've highlighted the necessity for ingredient browsers to develop your own custom technology, right? So, what specific needs did these technologies address that, like existing solutions, like on the market, failed to?
Yeah, I think, the one thing is communication, right? And building technology that is built for teams or our team that has this crossover between time zones and that there is handoff of information and ensuring that like when someone logs on in the morning, that they're able to get the right information and the right updates that they need to continue to do their job. And I think a lot of systems are very transactional in nature, right? And are less about documentation and process mapping. And so there's a lot of extra steps almost within our system that allows people to get a little bit more context as they're working so that the handoffs are a lot better. And so I think that's been, one of the big focuses that we've built in. And I think, it's not perfect, the software, but at least we own it. So we can blame ourselves if it's not good and we can fix it. But there is a lot of that communication built in around what we're doing that I think a lot of traditional ERP systems don't necessarily have because, it's, the flow is, usually with one team at one time zone. And so it goes through and then the information passes in a different way.
But other like a technological like advancements or like innovations that ingredient browsers is exploring at this point, like to further improve your supply chain, custom services, or like overall operations. Do you see any kind of gaps on the current market, like in terms of like existing tools, maybe something that might help you in terms of your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously every day there are new tools that are coming out to solve a lot of global supply chain problems. We look at some of those. I think the thing that we enjoy about the platform we're building is it's one singular platform. And so the information really flows between our users within our company really easily. And so it gives everyone a lot of access to the information that they need when they need it. I think the one thing that, we're trying to solve with our technology is helping to bring the customer journey into our software. I think a lot of times, we're managing very complex transactions that take 12 months sometimes just to even close a transaction. And a lot of times like that information is all in email. And so, I always joke that the first deal we did took 120 emails. That doesn't necessarily, speak of efficiency. And so I think building a system that can, hopefully alleviate some of that communication and make it a little bit easier for us to interact with our customers and give them access to information a lot faster and prevent, things being lost in email. I think that a lot of what we're trying to build is centered around that. And I think, if you look at companies like Flexport, they've built, really unique software that allows that and does that really well. And I think, we look at them as software that, we want to emulate. Unfortunately, you can't buy their software. So, you have to build some of it yourselves. But I think like software like that has allowed, companies that operate with a lot of stakeholders in any given transaction, right? If you think about Flexport, every container that moves has a salesperson, an import person, there's a logistics person, there's the customer, there could be other people on the customer side that need information. So having a platform that allows everyone to interact centered around one transaction really helps reduce some of the noise that you tend to see in traditional B2B and emails going around.
And finally, I would like to ask you about networking. So good relationships are key in business, particularly when operating like internationally, right? So Eran, how do you approach networking to build like a meaningful and productive connections?
Yeah, I think throughout my life I've enjoyed, and thankfully, that's been something I've enjoyed to do. So it hasn't been something I have had to focus on too much. But I think people, especially in the US, I found that the openness to help and listen and try and work with you and give of people's time, I think is there in a way that I haven't seen it. I hadn't experienced it before and was pretty incredible. And I think even our competitors are friends of ours, and because the market is so big, that sharing best practices doesn't necessarily hurt you, right? I think that it allows for everyone to grow, and there's enough pie for everyone. And so, using that as a let's say a foundation, that's allowed me and has made me a little bit more aggressive in trying to build relationships and meet new people and have those conversations. And, always try and end a conversation with, who else can you introduce me to? Who else should I be speaking to? Is there anyone else that you can think of? Let me know if you need anything. And I've, even though I have a relatively large network, I still also have like this small, strong network of people that I lean on a little bit more, and they lean on me a little bit more. And I think that identifying those key people in your life and making sure that you keep those relationships is very important. And then I think, again, I don't have all the conversations with suppliers and potential suppliers or potential customers, and there's a lot of that happening. And I think building some of that, at least in the culture of the business, to make sure that people know and understand how important stakeholders are, and that, replying to an email, regardless of what the outcome is incredibly important and the right thing to do. And I think because you just never know when you're going to need that person. And I think it's always the things that you think are going to be the most exciting that land up not working out, and the things that you think are going to be the most useless and have no value land up adding the most value. And so I always am very careful not to discount things that I think are going to not lead to anything, because I tend to be wrong. And so that's, I think, a good lesson for me when it comes to networking and relationships.
Cannot agree more with that statement. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing all those insights. It was awesome learning how you work with people and suppliers from all over. Thank you for your time, and good luck with everything ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to have this conversation.